Best of r/Tales from Tech Support episode 11. Because of recent backup threads, one of my first jobs as an intern was to back up the systems. There were two senior interns that thought I was not doing my job, so they wrote a background script that would monitor if and when I did backups. I noticed this script and did not pay much attention to it, other than looking at the source code. Then one day, it crashed. Since I wasn't supposed to know about the secret monitoring script, I just kept on doing my job. About a week later, I get called into the boss's office. "How come you are not doing backups?" "Well, I am. And I noticed the script that the senior interns wrote had crashed. If you would like, I can help them debug the script and make it work again. I know what the problem is." The next day, the senior interns had to do the backups and I moved on to other projects. Thank you. Next. TL. Doctor not possible. $CW. Puzzled coworker. $CW2. Knows where to go. $me. Obvious. $so. Security officer. $CW. Yo $me. Can you check over the files of the package you built? What is wrong this time? Usually RTFM and some logic will answer any questions. $me. What did you break this time? $CW. Well, me nothing, but something seems wrong. Yeah right. $me. Okay, let's see. Who are you? $me. Original file name, random code, email address. Harmer looks pretty bad people. $me. We have ransomware. How to contact SOC/the SEO. $CW2. Through the service desk, right this way. Service desk contacts $so. After explaining directly hands the phone to me. $me. We seem to have an active ransomware infection. $so. Ah yes, I know. Hang on, what? Why is that not communicated all over the building? $me. Excuse me? $so. Yeah well, I had this infected system I was examining and it seems it had an RDP connection somehow. My brain shuts off. How in the world are you connecting an infected system to the network, you fool? Brain rebooted after kernel panic. $me. I missed some of what you said, can you repeat please? $so. Yeah well, I had this infected system I was examining and it seems it had an RDP connection somehow. It is already shut down and disconnected but it looks like several thousand files have been touched. $me. Okay, so there is no imminent danger anymore? $so. Nope. It seems the snapshots from this morning are still okay so you can right click any folder and restore those. $me. I'll see how much was hit in our share. I'll make a list. Sending email with files list. $me. To $CW/$CW2. I'm off for today. There is no telling what files were hit. I suggest you do the same so they can clean up this and $show over the weekend. Thank you. Next. I've worked in IT on and off for years, and unfortunately sometimes IT staff can be the problem. Some years ago, when Microsoft bought Skype, I was with a megacorp's IT department and we were rolling out the first upgrade that patched Link to look like Skype. For some insane reason, deployment began the night before a statutory holiday weekend, perhaps in the hopes less people would be affected. Unfortunately, half our company was based in a country that didn't have a holiday that day, so myself and two other overtime guys, let's call them Jay and Bob, had to support thousands of staff. Jay was a nice guy who did his job well, like many a first line, not a qualified programmer but competent enough to troubleshoot, repair software, diagnose issues and kick severe stuff up to second line. Bob, meanwhile, had dreams of becoming an engineer, but had no formal training and instead believed that if he wrote enough automation scripts he would be promoted any day now. This wouldn't be a problem on a normal day, because we just stick up a banner explaining the help desk is short-staffed. But the deployment went wrong and literally every user account was throwing up an error when launching Skype and so we were bombarded with contacts. Jay figured out that simply deleting a couple of files in the user folder would fix the issue for the day, and so we bravely fought against the flood of contacts, until Bob decided enough was enough. Without telling anyone, he wrote a script to delete that file remotely, pointed it at Jay's laptop, and fired it up. Moments later, concern in his voice, I hear Jay ask if anyone else's laptop is acting weird. I cross over and sure enough, Jay's computer is not having a fun time. That's when, sheepishly, Bob admits that he deployed his script and that, rather than deleting 2 files from the user folder, it began deleting everything on Jay's C drive. Bob is no longer allowed to write his own scripts. Thank you. Next. I worked level 3 for a long time, and used to get called in a couple times a week. Some of the investigations were fun. Some were insane. We had a SQL Server cluster set up active-passive, with some kind of synching technology between them, and the cluster was super unstable. Active would fail, the apps would auto-fail over, and then level 2 would be in charge of failing it back. We had a vendor doing our infrastructure and level 1/2, as well as backups. Sinister foreshadowing music. The number of times I'd hear them say we'll just delete the primary, restart the sync and then fail it back to primary was shocking. It was their default fix for anything and it meant running on a single node for a few days, with a single copy of the database. I was the broken record guy. Can't you just fix it? When was the last backup? Can we get a DBA on this? One day, the mystery corruption struck twice and we lost primary and backup within a few hours. Oh well, let's pull from backup. A few hours later we get a call, you've been waiting for the backups are unusable. Please ask level 3 to rebuild the database. Rebuild it. You know, we must know all the data that's been added to it in the 2 years since the last usable backup was taken. Our business partners took the hit and we started from an empty database and we had to hear about it for months. Rightly so. During the RCA call, one of the vendor engineers is stumped because the backup command looks just fine but the backup output is a very tiny file. They show the command on the screen and one of my colleague jumps in. What is the T parameter for? It compresses the output so it uses less disk space. We added it. Music intensifies. A couple years ago because the backups were taking too much space. No, it means test and the backup only simulates a backup. It doesn't write the output. Yes, it tests it, which is why we didn't need to test the backups. Benny Hill music starts playing. Level 3 slaps the bald vendor exec's head. Thank you. Next. I was a programmer and management thought it would be great if we all took turns on the support desk so we could see things from the customer perspective. I was great at it. Before the customer was done asking the question, I could tell them what page in the manual the answer was on. Then, one day I had a call from a customer that wanted to know how an RGB function worked, change color of something. I explained that the function took a hexadecimal value and you had to or in the bits you wanted on and explained what each bit did. They were like, hex, binary, what is this magic? I was frustrated that I might have to explain these concepts over the phone. I had a better idea. I said, I can help you, but you have to follow these instructions perfectly. They got excited and promised to do so. I said, go to your boss and tell him, you are not worthy of your job. 10 minutes later, my boss came in laughing and said you are no longer on the support desk. It was easy, back then, to forget that the end user of this project probably had no professional education in programming and were just thrown at a project because they were subject matter experts, or other normal ways normal people end up behind the wheel of a programming language. Thank you. Next. Several years ago, I worked for one of the top 2 hard drive companies as tech support. I worked in the chat/email support team. We used Salesforce for our ticketing system, with a web form to submit email tickets. Our email system was one of those where you could not directly email the mailbox without having a previous ticket. If you tried, it would send back an automated response saying to use the web form, and close the ticket automatically. So at the time of this incident, our incident numbers were somewhere around 190,000. I had been there around 5 years at the time, and it had gone from about 112,000 to the 190k. Not too bad of numbers, but the numbers were steadily going up at a normal rate. We came in on a Monday one day and I noticed that the first new email I get has an incident number of 970k. Wait a minute, that is almost 700k more than we had on Friday. So I bring it up to management. They ignore it, thinking I can possibly be telling the truth. I notice the numbers are going up even higher with subsequent emails. 10k in between my first email and the second. So I decide to do some checking. I do a search with a random number in that 700k range. I find an automated response ticket. I put in another random number. Same thing. Try about 5 or 6 more. Same thing. Then I look at where the mail is coming from. Mailer daemon at blah. Com. Don't recall the actual server name. It's a response that this is an invalid email address. After doing some research, it turns out someone had put in a ticket, but mistyped their email address. So when we replied, their mail server sent a reply back saying the email address did not exist. Our mailbox sent back an automated reply saying we did not accept direct emails. Their system then sent back one saying that mailer daemon is not a valid email. Back and forth. Over an entire weekend, I reached out to one of the Salesforce engineers on staff I knew from UAT testing. I showed them what was going on. 15 minutes later, there is a block in the system for all mailer daemon email addresses. By that point we had pushed past the 1 million ticket mark. Thank you. Next. Hi everybody. My first post, on mobile. TLDR on bottom. The recent backup stories reminded me of a story my mum told me. We are talking 40 years ago. The computer are the size of a closet, and the disks are tape on large wheel. She worked in a large company. One of the employees was terribly incompetent, but couldn't be fired because he was related to somebody in upper management. In the end, somebody decided to put him where he could do the least damage. Backups. My mother tried her best to explain to him how to perform backups. She even taped to the machine stickers with 1, 2, 3, arrow to the side, 4. After half a year or so, backup was needed. You probably can see by now where this is going. All the tapes were blank. They called the guy, who brought with him a folder with half a year of backup logs. Every log had only one line, write protected. Apparently this tapes had some sort of a ring that needed to be taken out before you could write to the tape. TLDR, incompetent guy put in charge of backups, forgot to remove write protection, and logged the error nonetheless.